Hello everyone, a very good morning to all. In this class, we are going to talk about New Criticism. New Criticism is a literary movement which emerged in the beginning of 20th century in the hands of T.S. Eliot, I.R. Research, William Emerson, etc. But it had its origins in the hands of Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and the pioneer figure of New Criticism is T.S. Eliot, whose theory of impersonality influenced the emergence of New Criticism in the beginning of 20th century. New Criticism is a literary movement which focuses on different features, characteristics, etc., etc. The first characteristic of New Criticism is to be objective. A reader is supposed to be objective in his or her interpretation. He or she should talk about the depth of the text, the linguistic elements of the text. Instead of talking about the socio-political, economic background, the context of the text, he or she, that means the reader, should entirely focus on the linguistic elements of the text. The linguistic elements of a text include the metaphor, simile, etc., etc. Therefore, the first characteristic of New Criticism is to be objective in interpretation. The second important characteristic of New Criticism is close reading. Every reader should concentrate on a detailed and thorough analysis of a text. Instead of just talking about the socio-political background, the close reading includes the in-depth understanding of a text from different perspectives. Therefore, to explicate the text is important for a new critic. The third important characteristic of New Criticism is the literariness. The focus of a reader, the focus of a new critic should be on the literariness. So what is literariness? Literariness refers to the literary elements which includes not the emotional and the subjective elements of a text, but on the contrary, literariness exists in the linguistic elements of a text. That is why a text is not supposed to be a composite or a combination of mere emotions played by the author in the minds of the reader. The reader should talk about how different elements, the sentences, the syntax, the metaphor, alliteration, ambiguity, simile, imagery, they're being organized categorically, synchronically or diachronically in a text. So how the elements have been organized, this should be the primary focus of every reader, every new critic. That is why instead of focusing on the subjective elements, the subjectivity, the author, the reader should talk about the literatures, which lies not in the emotional figures but in the linguistic elements of a text. Another important characteristic of New Criticism is to basically focus on what is there inside and in the text. That is why T.S. Eliot said that what is New Criticism? New Criticism is a study of the text and only the elements which remain inside the text. Therefore, it should be considered that New Criticism denounces the socio-political elements of a text. Another important characteristic of New Criticism is to avoid two important fallacies. Worsley and Wimsatt, they introduce two important fallacies. One is affective fallacy, other one is intentional fallacy. What is intentional fallacy? Intentional fallacy refers to the fallacy which is caused by the intentions of the author. The author's intention influences the reader in reading a text. If a reader goes by the intention of the text, goes by the intention of the author, then he or she falls under the influence of the author. That is why it is fallacious. That is why new critic believes that a reader, a new critic, should not give importance to the intentions of the author. Another important fallacy pioneered or introduced by Worsley and Wimsatt is affective fallacy. Affective fallacy refers to the effects of the text in the minds of the reader. The reader is supposed to be falling under the influence of the, under the effects of the, author. If the author is supposed to be a great author, best author, renowned author, canonized author, so he or she may influence the reader, but the reader should be independent of these things. The reader, on the contrary, should avoid these two fallacies. This is known as affective fallacy. Therefore, these fallacies, this fallacious object should be avoided by every reader, every critic, while interpreting or while judging a text. So, these are the basics of new criticism. Now, we must talk about John Crowe Ransom. John Crowe Ransom, in the work The New Criticism, said that the objective of criticism is to be objective. It should not give importance to the subjectivity. If a reader knows personally the writer, then there is no need of criticism. It would be a personal judgment. It would be a subjective judgment. Therefore, new criticism avoided personalized or interpretation, biased interpretation, subjective interpretation, and mostly focuses on the element of impersonality, which was actually introduced by T.S. Eliot. This impersonality refers to the impersonal elements. A poet, according to T.S. Eliot, is not to be personal. He or she should rise above personality, above personal elements. So that is why the impersonality should be an important characteristic of new criticism. Research in practical criticism focused on the interpretation of a text, not giving importance to the author. In practical criticism, in principles of literary criticism, research utterly focused on the elements of these, the parameters of new criticism. They were the pioneers. John Keats talking about new negative capability, and Coleridge talking about the difference between abstract and concrete, talking about imagination. In their works also we find the origins, the emergence of new criticism. Now, what are the limitations of new criticism? New criticism avoids study of socio-political background. But how is it possible to study a text without talking about the socio-political context, without talking about the socio-political background of a text? It would be merely incomplete study of the text. Therefore, the basic limitation of new criticism is that new criticism does not give importance to the socio-political background of the text, because literature is supposed to be the mirror of the society. So if we only talk about the metaphor, the play of simile, the play of different linguistic elements such as alliteration, pun, symbols, etc., etc., but not talking about the author's background, the context, how is it possible to study George Orwell's 1984? How it would be possible for us, for a reader, to study A Modest Proposal? These are the works. How is it possible to study The Rape of the Lock, which is a mock epic? So this is the basic limitation of new criticism. But new criticism had its way. New criticism silenced the conventional mood of reading. New criticism silenced the conventional strategies of interpretations from a personalized, from a subjective interpretations. New criticism brought in a different trend, established a different style of reading and interpreting a text. That is why new criticism still is relevant, important, and significant even in today's context. So, new criticism had its importance, has its importance still today, while talking about objectivity, talking about the close reading, explication of the text, talking about the literariness, talking about the verbal elements of the text, how the verbal elements of the text have well been organized in a particular text. This should be the focus. Later on, new historicism came. Later on, different, feminism, Marxism, their literary trends and movements, they came. They challenged new criticism only in the ground. This is the ground where new criticism faces lots of criticism. What is the ground? Socio-political denunciation. Denunciation of socio-political importance of a text. Because a text is produced and constructed in a society, in a social mood of being, which should not be avoided. But new criticism still is important because of its importance to the linguistic elements, because of its importance given to the objectivity, the kind of language which helps a reader, which helps a critic to study a literary text. A literary text is not supposed to be, is not considered to be just a play or just a composite, just a combination, just a whole of emotions of the author asserted upon the reader. The reader is to be independent of these things. A critic is supposed to be independent of the things. He should avoid these fallacious objects while reading or while interpreting a text. While giving these importance, while talking about these things, we strongly feel the importance of new criticism. Dear students, dear learners, this is all about new criticism, just an introduction to new criticism. In the following episodes, in the following classes, we will talk about new criticism in details. Thank you very much.